everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the 101st episode of Welcome to the Wasteland, as we turn the page, close the book on Spielberg, and open the book on genre king himself, John Carpenter. And, of course, I have here one of my good friends and frequent collaborators, Rowan Wood. Rowan, thank you so much for coming on.
Of course, back-to-back weeks doesn't happen too often here on the show.
Well, usually at the beginning when nobody else wants to do any of the movies, then Rowan's a real pal and just on and does them with me.
It's true.
So,
Very
100%
true.
fact. And this week, we're starting off with the student film that John Carpenter started off with. Very short. I don't know how long our discussion about this will be, but this is Captain Voyeur. This might be one of my shortest episodes of this show, and that's even counting when I used to do this by myself and just talk to the camera. So there you go. But we have 3 segments on this show. We always start with coming attractions, which not only is this us talking about a student film, but we're also talking about the first weekend of January. So endless trash, people. Time to get started. So, Rowan, what are you most excited or I guess intrigued about watching that's coming out this first weekend of January?
I would say I am most interested, not necessarily excited, but interested in seeing Megan or M3 Gan, if you wanna mispronounce it in a fun way. This is I will say a lot of talent behind this one. James Wan, story by producing, and Akela Cooper, who did Malignant with James Wan last I guess 2 years ago.
Oh my God, if this
Now
has Malignant energy, this is going to be a fun time.
I have a feeling it's going to have Malignant energy. It's not directed by James Wan, but he is very heavily involved, and it's a Blumhouse movie. And Blumhouse, I think, hit more than they miss. So again, I'm more interested in this movie than not. By the time this episode comes out, Shane, you will have seen this movie, right?
Correct. I will be
Yeah.
seeing this in less than a week at a press screening, and oh, that's going to be one of those fun moments sitting in that Regal and King of Prussia, just being like, how's this audience going to react to this?
Yeah. It stars Allison Williams, who was in Get Out, so I am cautiously optimistic that the performances in this and everything is going to be pretty solid, and the trailer looks kind of fun. The one thing that is holding me back from saying this is going to be like a modern cult classic, it might be a cult classic, but like that it's going to be legitimately good, is that it's PG-13, and I feel like that's going to hold it back just a little bit from being like
going nuts.
I don't know.
And honestly,
exactly, just from really committing.
This should be going nuts. Like they
Exactly.
like that dance. That was the first thing I saw about this movie was Double Toes and being like, look at this Megan, this ridiculous dance. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
what is this movie? And I hope it's what is this movie in a good way. Also, best press screenings to go to are horror movies. Because usually,
Yeah.
well, actually, I haven't gone to Ticket to Paradise was the one comedy that I've been to, I feel like, but oh man, the horror movie ones are a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to I want to hear the people laughing along with this, hopefully because it's having fun with itself.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, I think, the best that we can hope for, that it does not take itself too seriously and just has a lot of fun with it in general.
Now, my most anticipated for this weekend is The Old Way, which is a Western starring Nick Cage. Nick Cage doing his first ever Western, and Nick Cage told a story about how his horse wanted to murder him while he was on the Hollywood Reporters Actors Roundtable. And I'm like, I have to see this movie at this point, right? Like, I have to see the chemistry between this actor and this horse, that this horse wanted to pull a Klaus Kinski and straight murder Nick Cage.
The lack of chemistry, maybe.
Lacking in chemistry.
Yeah.
Which also, did you hear what Nick Cage wants to do next?
I think I did read it, but I forget. What is it?
He wants to do a musical. He's like, I'm not really a good singer, but like I always wanted to do one. Like, oh my God.
You could dub him. Yeah.
No. He has to sing. I want him to reach Pierce Brosnan class of just cult
Somehow,
status for horrible
somehow I think
singing in a
he's
musical.
underestimating himself, but we shall see. We shall see.
We shall sing. Hey,
Whatever Nick Cage wants, Nick Cage gets.
he sang pretty great in the beginning of Face Off. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Oh my God, Nick Cage is an energy, and that's why I want to see this Western. Oh man. So yeah, it's gonna be an interesting first weekend of January. So we'll see how that goes. But which also that the Pale Blue Eyes is coming out on Netflix, that new Christian Bale
Yeah.
film. So like I would probably be more legitimately interested in seeing that film, but like, come on, it's Nick Cage in a Western, and also chance for absurd horror movie with Megan. Uh, one quick aside. Favorite January horror movie experience in the movies was going to see Replicas starring Keanu Reeves with my friend Joe, that we still won't stop talking about how terrible that movie was. We had so much fun, though, watching it. But our feature, which really isn't a feature, is a 6-minute short film from John Carpenter when he was a student called Captain Voyeur. And I wonder why it's called that. So basically, this story is this young man who rocks a mask and goes around creeping on people, watching people through windows doing sexual acts and just overall being a creep. But Rowan, what were your general thoughts on Captain Voyeur?
Well, last night I went up to my dad and said, "Hey, Dad, I got to watch this John Carpenter student short for Shane Shonemar. You want to watch this?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure." I've watched all of Game of Thrones with my parents, so the fact that it was very sexual in nature was not a problem. But we were laughing the entire time because I love like John Carpenter's like really like twisted and dark style of humor, and I think that really, or at least like a proto version of that, sort of
Yeah.
comes through here. And I also thought it was quite interesting that he did this with no dialogue, because this doesn't really need dialogue. It's a premise you can get across very easily,
Yeah.
in that regard. But at the same time, I feel like so he made this in 1969. Nice. But at the same time,
Nice.
if this was made 6 years later, I think this could have been like an SNL skit. I think that this is something that like the first couple years of SNL would have done hilariously. Granted, they would have put way too much dialogue in there and probably would have like ruined the premise. But still, this just it's just it's super absurd and super weird. And I will say, it's just about exactly as I expected from John Carpenter.
It's one of those kinds of things where just like you basically had a laugh track moment where he pops out in like his costume and just like,
With like the
oh
superhero music. Yeah.
oh, we're ready to go. and,
Right.
and he looks so absurd. And then even the way they shoot like the sexual acts of like the spanking and the whipping and stuff like that, it's just like
So funny.
and there's just a sense of like, this is silly and we're gonna have a good time watching this. And
Right.
like a good moral story has the character get some comeuppance. Little extreme, like a little extreme, but there's some
Yeah.
comeuppance here for this man creeping on all these people. Did you
Right.
expect that ending?
I honestly didn't expect anything from this short, so I'm gonna say no. I didn't expect the title card to come in like a third of the way through. I
Right.
didn't expect it to look like a child's hand drawing, like all of the titles. I just think everything here just came out of nowhere, and that is exactly what I would expect from a like John Carpenter student short.
What's great is there's some really impressive camera work in this. Like
Oh yeah.
the whole first part of it basically was setting up that first scene from Halloween of the
Right.
whole like creeping voyeur camera, and it works so well. And it's, you can tell that's the thing. John Carpenter really knows how to direct a film and build
Mhm.
tension and suspense. And a lot of his films have a fun sense of humor. dark sense of humor, but a fun sense of humor about it. And this film just felt like somebody having fun and also really nice splashes of potential and talent that is just like, well, now I want to see what else this guy can do. And you know what? That's what you need to do with your first film, is get people's attention that way.
Exactly. And as a student myself who is not necessarily making these films to get noticed or anything, just making them for fun, I completely empathize with Carpenter in this scenario and see exactly what he's going for. And yeah, I love it. I mean, I'm not saying that I want one of my films that I'm making now to be looked back on if I ever do something notable, but at the same time, I really hope if that does happen that it's one of the weird ones, so people will like talk about it like this.
So someday somebody like myself who's venturing into the filmography of Rowan Wood someday, when he is an acclaimed
Yeah.
director, will see this and be like, wow, there's a lot of potential there. And then
Yeah,
seeing the rest of his great filmography. So, yes, Rowan, this is
right.
your future.
But if this, if this wasn't directed by John Carpenter, like if it was just some random USC student from the late 60s, we would be like, what the hell is going on here? Like, why would we even be watching this? But because it's John Carpenter, we are looking at it with a more, I would say, more respectful and more analytical eye than we would give like someone whose name was not at the forefront of the minds of a lot of film fans.
I would like to think that I would notice the great technical prowess and also the shameless, just weird humor about it.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
it is fair. Any other
Yeah.
thoughts on Captain Voyeur?
Well, I think that this got issues, and I won't say he deserved what had coming to him, but at the same time, what the hell did he expect?
Right? It's one of those things where it's just like,
Yeah,
something bad's going to happen. Something bad did.
yeah,
But and that's another thing setting up. It's like, you should expect this out of a John Carpenter.
right.
It's going to end very abrupt, very violently. So boom, there it
Yeah,
is. But Rowan here will be back talking about another film in like May. Because
yep, makes
Ghosts
sense.
of Mars. But before we wrap up this show, we always have some recommendations for you. And we've been watching a lot of great stuff lately. So, Rowan, what would you like to recommend to everybody?
I am going to recommend Martin McDonagh. He did a film in 2008. It was his first major motion picture. It is called In Bruges, and was the first film that Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson starred in together before the Banshees of Inisherin. So
Mm-hmm.
that Banshees was a sort of a reunion in that regard. In Bruges is all about two hitmen who go to the city of Bruges in Belgium to lay low and await their next task. Ray Fiennes also starred in this movie. Clemence Posey, who I know from Harry Potter, and some other really weird, fun, exciting character actors whose names I don't exactly remember at this present moment. But everything in this movie landed for me. I love McDonagh's like really, really. Speaking of dark senses of humor,
Yeah.
Martin McDonagh has a really, really keen one. As a playwright, I feel like that's sort of like the playwright vibe. To have sort of like a not necessarily a nihilistic outlook on the world, but the ability to laugh at the dark things in life, or at least make people laugh at those things. And so the script is obviously fantastic. The performances are excellent. I think Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson are absolutely perfect together, and I'm glad that they were back together in Banshees. And Ray Fiennes is also, this just reinforces like how he is one of my favorite actors, and I think one of the greatest British actors still working today. The score, Carter Burwell, I think he is one of the best composers around. Not to keep throwing superlatives out there, but I think Carter Burwell is absolutely stellar here, and just I don't think that this movie is as well directed as a lot of his as a lot of McDonough's future movies. Like, I'm not a huge fan of Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, but it is shot and directed very well. And
Mhm.
Banshees is just a cut above the rest, I think, there. But I think like there's a lot here that is a signifier for how McDonough will sort of get more cinematic with his films later on. So In Bruges is a wholehearted recommendation for me if you have not yet seen it.
I love this movie so much. I love Martin McDonagh's work, and Carter Burwell is such a great composer, and it's so interesting because I remember when I first started watching Three Billboards, I'm like, Coen Brothers? And
Yeah.
I think there's influence there, and the fact that Carter Burwell scores his films like he scored all the Coen Brothers films just adds that layer into it too. But like, I'm a huge fan of McDonough, and he was on the Directors Roundtable this year, and I loved his response to why he doesn't direct more often. He's like, I direct a film every 5, 6 years, and maybe I'd do more if I wasn't so lazy. It's just like being honest, keeping it real.
Exactly. Love it.
Um, so I have a few recommendations. So, new film to recommend: EO. What an experience this movie is. And I thought Decision to Leave was a shoe-in to win Best International Film. Better watch out. Poland's coming. And EO, which is a story about a donkey where we spend a film with a donkey, and there's no narration, there's no voiceover. This donkey can't speak, but this donkey gives one of the best performances I've seen all year. And this is a deeply affecting film that just has such a way with making us reflect upon humanity and how we interact with each other and animals and nature. It's a special film, and I was so excited about it. Now, a film to check off my watch list, which I've been watching quite a few this week, was Memories of Murder, which we just recorded before this. So in a couple of weeks, you can go check out our episode of Rowan in the Wasteland on Memories of Murder. Such an amazing crime thriller, murder investigation story from Bong Joon-ho. And a film that I rewatched that's one of my own was Vampyr, which we also did for Rowan in the Wasteland. So all the shameless plugs this time around for Rowan in the Wasteland, and that is a 1932 directed vampire film, which it was a very unique vampire film early on in cinema. So a lot of great things for you all to check out. And Rowan certainly has been watching a lot of great movies lately. So if you follow him on Letterboxd, you should check out all the movies he's been checking out. So shameless plugs all
Yes.
around. And as we
Yeah.
wrap up, Rowan, shamelessly plug.
Well, my biggest thing, aside from Rowan in the Wasteland, is probably the lenientcritic.com. That's LENIENT critic.com. I write about movies and stuff there. It's a lot of fun. You can also follow me at Bits of Joel on Twitter. I post all my Lenient Critic stuff there. So if you want to keep up with that, additionally, at Bits of Joel, spelled phonetically. And I think that's really about it for now. But Rowan in the Wasteland is available on all the podcast places, so definitely check that out. We're approaching, I believe, in terms of scheduling, episodes going up, we are approaching episode 30 now, which we did with our friend Foster, who was on this show last week.
Yes.
Yeah. So lots of fun stuff happening. We have a great, fun idea for our 40th. So definitely go and catch up with the ones you haven't listened to yet, if you are so inclined.
Absolutely. And for what's coming up next on Welcome to the Wasteland, next week's episode is the featured debut of John Carpenter, and that is Dark Star. And I will be talking about that with my good friend Matt, who's part of my movie club. And if you haven't checked out any of the movie club, have that over on the Wasteland Reviewer YouTube channel as well. We will be recording our episode on Place Beyond the Pines that we'll be discussing as a group. So check out the next episode, Dark Star, and continue to check out our journey through all of John Carpenter's work, which will be going through the end of May. But Rowan, thank you so much for coming on.
As always, Shane, thank you for having me.
Thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.